this lab, we're going to install and configure Azure Active Directory Connect. And this lab should only take about 60 minutes to complete. And the scenario for this lab is you have an organization that requires that its on-premises Active Directory user accounts be synchronized with Azure Active Directory. And so it's necessary to implement a solution that will synchronize all accounts from a designated Active Directory organizational unit, with the exception of a user account, and we'll use an attribute called the MSDS Cloud Extension Attribute 15. And what we'll do with that attribute is we'll set the sync value to no sync. Now there are 3 exercises in this lab. The first one, in which we'll install and set up Azure Active Directory Connect. The second exercise, we will configure Azure Active Directory Connect filtering. And the third and final exercise is where we will manage the directory synchronization process. And we'll start off now with task 1 from exercise 1, where we create an Azure AD tenant. First thing we want to do is connect to the Windows Server 2012 R2 domain controller, and that would be lon-dc1, and this is a lab virtual machine. Now you could do this on a Windows Server 2016 as well, but we have this virtual machine ready to go, and so we'll use it. Now you want to log in as /administrator, and you should already be logged in from the virtual machine, but if you're not, the password is capital P A $W0RD. Let's launch Internet Explorer and navigate out to the portal, and that's https://portal.azure.com. Sign in with your Service Administrator account from your Azure subscription. Here in the portal, we want to click on the plus new, Security and Identity, and Azure Active Directory. For the organization name, we're going to call this ADatum Sync. And the initial domain name, we want to specify a unique name, and this will become the public domain name on your Azure AD tenant, and it'll have a suffix of onmicrosoft.com. The earlier part of that will be unique to you. I'm typing in something different here. And choose a country or region closest to you. And click Create. Wait a bit for the Azure Active Directory tenant to be provisioned. And once it has, you want to click here on the Here link. And this automatically switches you to your current Azure AD tenant, which is now ADatum Sync. Now we're going to move on to task 2, where we create an Azure AD user with a global administrator role. And from here we want to click on Add User. The name we want AAD Sync User. The username will be AADuser1 at your domain.onmicrosoft.com, where your domain is that public domain that you assigned to your Azure AD tenant in the previous task. Directory role, we want to click on Global Administrator. Click on the Show Password checkbox here, and we're going to be changing this temporary auto-generated password shortly, so keep track of that either on the clipboard or writing it down. Click Create. Up here in the Internet Explorer window, you can click on this little gear wheel and then click Safety. What this does is it opens up an in-private browsing session here. And from here we want to navigate to https://portal.azure.com and sign in with the credentials of this newly created user, this AADuser1. And we do want to update our password. Let's put in the temporary password. And you're going to want to enter in a new password as well as confirm that password. And that will be capital P A 55W.RD. And now that that's done, we can go ahead and sign out of the portal. Now we're ready for task 3, where we install and set up Azure AD Connect. So from this domain controller, I want to start Internet Explorer, And I'm going to browse out to https://www.microsoft.com/en-us/details.aspx?id equals 47594. And let's click on download. And let's click here with run. And this launches the Azure AD Connect setup. And I'm going to agree to these license terms and click continue. And from here I'm going to click on customize and I'll click install. And I'm just going to leave the default options here for password synchronization and click next. And I'm going to type in the AD credentials of the account of that global administrator, and that's the AAD-user1 at mydomain.onmicrosoft.com. For the forest, let's designate adatum.com. The username will do adatum \administrator. And the password, capital P, A, $, W0RD. Let's click on Add Directory. Click Next. And the message, users will not be able to sign in Azure AD using their on-premises credentials. And this is expected since the Azure AD instance we created doesn't have a verified domain that matches our Active Directory domain name. We can skip this step in our lab for now. Otherwise, we'd need to probably register a custom domain name in a public DNS registrar. This is just a lab. Let's click Next here. For domain and OU filtering, let's click Next again. And let's click Next again. And one last, and again Next. And we want to ensure that the password has synchronization. We want to select that and click Next. We want to uncheck the Start the Synchronization process when configuration completes. And we want to click Install. And this takes approximately 15 minutes to install. So you might want to wander off and come back in about 15 minutes or so. And it looks as if it went through. So what we want to do here is click Exit. So for this lab, what have we done? We've created a new Azure Active Directory tenant, an Azure Active Directory user with global administrator role. We installed the AAD Connect on a Windows 2012 R2 domain controller. But notice at this point we have not activated the directory synchronization process, and we'll be doing that in the next exercise after we configure the synchronization filtering. So let's move on to exercise 2, where we configure that filtering. And we'll start with task 1, where we configure organizational unit-based filtering and AAD Connect. And so from our domain controller, lon-dc1, we want to click on the Azure AD Connect icon on the desktop. We want to click on Configure. Click the Customize Synchronization options and click Next. We want to type in our Azure AD credentials here for the account with that global administrator role. And if you remember, that's AAD-user1 at your domain on.microsoft.com. Password will be capital P A 55W.RD and click Next. Here you want to click on Next. Here we want to ensure that the sync selected domains and OUs expand subnodes underneath adatum.com node, and we want to unselect all checkboxes with the exception of the checkbox next to the IT entry. And what this does is it will only synchronize the objects in our IT organizational unit, or OU. Click Next. Ensure that password hash synchronization, that checkbox is selected, and click Next. We also want to ensure that to start the synchronization process when configuration completes, and that must be cleared. So that checkbox is not enabled. And click Configure. And the reason for that is we're not supposed to start the synchronization yet, because we will configure some additional filtering options in the next task of this exercise. So at this point, we can close the Azure AD Connect window and move on to task 2, where we configure attribute-based filtering of AAD Connect. And we'll start that off by navigating to the App section of the Start screen. And we want to just find Synchronization Rules Editor. And we want to make sure that the inbound is selected in the direction drop-down list here, and we want to click Add New Rule. Here on the description page, we want to specify the following. For the name, we want Custom In from AD-User No-Sync Filter. Description, Custom Inbound Rule excludes users from MS-DS-Cloud Extension Attribute 15 set to No Sync. For the connected system, we want adatum.com, and the connected system object type, user. Metaverse option type, person. Link type, join. And for the precedence, 50. At this point, we can leave the tag text box and the enable password sync cleared and click Next. Here we want to click on Add Group and click on Add Clause. And we want to specify the following. In the attribute drop-down list, we want to select, we have to go down here a bit, the MSDS-Cloud Extension Attribute 15. In the operator drop-down list, we want to select equal. And in the value text box, type no sync. Click Next. Here on the Join Rules page, we want to click on Next. On transformations, we want to click Add Transformation and specify the following. In the flow type drop-down list, we want to select constant. In the target attribute drop-down list, we select cloud filtered. And in the source text box, type in true. Click Add, and we'll notice here that our new rule is listed. We can close out of the Synchronization Rules Editor window. And we move on to Task 3, where we prepare Active Directory objects for synchronization. What we want to do is switch to the Server Manager, and over here click on Tools, and select the Active Directory Administrative Center. Click on ADATUM Local. Double-click IT. And what this does is displays the content of our IT organizational unit. At the very top here, we want to make sure that Amr Zaki is selected and click Properties. And you can do right-click or over here in the task pane. And we want to click on Extensions. Click on Attribute Editor. Let's scroll down to the list of attributes until we find that MSDS-Cloud Extension Attribute 15. And we want to select it and click Edit. Here in the value text box, we want to type in No Sync and click OK. Let's click OK to close out this window, but leave the Active Directory Admin Center open for now. We're going to use it later. Now let's switch back to the Synchronization Service Manager window. And let's click on Connectors. Select adatum.com. Click Properties. And we want to select Attributes. And let's click on Show All. Again, we scroll down to the MSDS-Cloud Extension Attribute 15 entry and enable the checkbox next to it. And click OK. So that puts us to the end of exercise 2, where we've configured organizational unit and attribute-based filtering of AAD Connect directory synchronization. We've also set the attribute of one of our objects in the Active Directory so that we can exclude it from directory synchronization. And we're ready for exercise 3, where we manage directory synchronization with AAD Connect. Start with task 1, where we enable AAD Connect directory synchronization, and we verify the results. So here on lawn DC1, let's open up PowerShell as an administrator, and we want to type in the following: get-AD sync scheduler. And from the output here, we really want to take a look at the sync cycle enabled, and it's currently set to false. Now we want to type in a couple more strings here. And what this will do is start the synchronization process. So let's type in set-AD sync scheduler space dash sync cycle enabled space $true. Type in start-AD sync cycle space dash policy type space initial. So we need to start the synchronization service, and we want to ensure that the Operations tab is selected, and we want to monitor the progress of this directory synchronization. And the initial synchronization process, it actually goes through several operations, including a full import, a full synchronization, and an export for Active Directory and Azure Active Directory instances. This takes a bit of time, so you might want to wait, hold off maybe 5 minutes or so for this to run. But once the synchronization process is completed, you'll know this by indication of success for all the operations. And we're pretty much there. So I'm going to switch over to Internet Explorer now. And we are in the ADATEM sync blade here, which is correct. I want to click on Users and Groups and click on All Users. And I want to verify that the Azure Active Directory contains user accounts included in the IT organizational unit of the on-premises Active Directory, with one exception, and that's that user Amr Zaki. And it's true, it's not here. So let's go ahead and leave this open because we're going to come back to that shortly, and move on to task 2, where we modify the properties of the AD user, that Amr Zaki, excluded from filtering. So we're going to switch over to the Active Directory Administrative Center again. And let's make sure that Amr Zaki is selected. And I'm going to click on Properties. And I'm going to click on Extensions. Click on the Attribute Editor tab. Click Filter. And clear the check mark next to Show Only Attributes that have values. I'm going to scroll down to the list of attributes again and keep an eye out for that MSDS-Cloud Extension Attribute 15. Let's click Edit on that. In the String Attribute Editor, I want to click Clear and click OK. Click OK again, and that closes this dialog box for Amr Zaki. Now we want to move on to task 3, where we trigger the Azure Active Directory Connect Delta directory synchronization, and we want to take a look at the results once we've done that. So I'm going to switch back over to the Windows PowerShell prompt, and I'm going to type in the following: start-AD sync cycle space dash policy type space delta. And once again, we're going to wait for that synchronization process to complete. and that takes anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes. And once that process is completed, and this will be indicated by the output displayed on the Operations tab of our Synchronization Service Manager, we want to wait until the synchronization process completes. And once that synchronization process has completed, we want to switch back over to Internet Explorer. And we want to refresh the page showing all of the users for the blade on 8ATEM Sync. And here we want to verify that the list of users now includes Amr Zaki. And that's the end of this exercise. And what we've done is we've synchronized all the user accounts residing in our IT organizational unit of 8atem.com Active Directory, and we synchronized those into the Active Directory tenant that we named 8ATEM Sync. And that concludes this lab where we install and configure Azure AD Connect.